The king's avatar begins by explaining about Glory, an MMORPG that is extremely popular in China and has a worldwide player base. It is known that the number of users reaches more than 130 million worldwide. Many great teams have sprung up, and professional players have become very popular as the game enters its 10th year since it was first released. One of the legendary best players was the battle god, Yaqiu, who was the captain of Excellent Era's team, one of the esport teams of Glory Professional Alliance. The scene then switches and shows a girl named Sumucheng who is in a hurry to go somewhere to meet a young man named Yaqiu, none other than the user who played Yaqiu's avatar in the Glory game. They met their team partners, where all the team members were talking about the team's recent declining performance, which seemed to be due to the captain, Yaqiu's annoying attitude. Their manager, Chui Li, told Yaqiu that his position as team captain would be replaced by a young man named Sun Xiang, a former member of Conquering Clouds before he transferred to Excellent Era. Not only was he dismissed as captain, but his account for playing the legendary avatar of the battle god would be taken over by Sun Xiang. Excellent Era's management was forced to fire Yaqiu because he was reluctant to accept sponsors, thereby reducing the income for the team. Sumucheng seemed surprised to hear of the management's decision to fire Yaqiu from his position as captain. Moreover, they didn't provide another account he could play with, so Yaqiu had no choice but to stop being a professional player. However, Yaqiu seemed to have anticipated his dismissal, even though he had led the Excellent Era's team to win the championship 3 times in a row. Chui Li then asked him to sign the agreement and announced that he was resigning himself, to protect Excellent Era's good name, who didn't want to be the subject of everyone's gossip if it was discovered that they threw away the best player they had in one of the legendary players in Glory. Sumucheng tried to prevent Yaqiu from resigning from Glory because every professional player who decided to go from there was banned from playing the game for an entire year. She clearly knew how important Glory was in Yaqiu's life, so she deeply regretted his decision to resign. Yaqiu then told Sumucheng so that she wouldn't have to worry about him and asked him to continue what he had been trying to do. After that, Yaqiu visited an internet cafe called Happy, where he met a woman named Chen Guo who was passionately playing the Glory game. However, in the end, Chen Guo had to give up on losing to her opponent, and she became very annoyed because her battle against one of the most formidable users in Glory always ended in defeat, whereas she had been playing Glory for more than 5 years. Because she was so annoyed that she had lost 52 times, she then just left her place and forgot to end the login session of the game. Realizing this, Chen Guo rushed back to her place and found Yaqiu, who had already taken her place. However, what surprised her was that he played Glory using her account and managed to win a battle she had never won in just a matter of seconds. She immediately assumed that he was the captain of Excellent Era, Yaqiu, whose identity was so mysterious. However, after seeing Yaqiu's ID card, Chen Guo felt certain that he was an ordinary young man who was lucky to win the game. He then asked about the night shift job opening at Happy. As it turned out, she was the owner of the internet cafe. She then told him he would be hired if he beat her in the game. He then told her that he had withdrawn from the game and given his account to someone else. Chen Guo then suggested that Yaqiu create a new account on Glory's 10th server, which will be released soon. Upon learning that, he decided to follow her advice. When she saw Yaqiu's first edition card, Chen Guo wondered if he really liked the Glory game and had been playing it for the past 10 years. Because over the past few years playing a formidable avatar who had already reached the level of a god, Yaqiu became a little clumsy when he started over from scratch and became a novice player who had to collect lots of items to use as weapons in the game and defeat monsters to advance to a more advanced level. Even so, he endured everything patiently and earnestly because all he needed right now was a job and a place to stay after Excellent Era fired him. After exploring and defeating many monsters, Yaqiu finally got a treasure chest with a weapon like an umbrella with a level 5 power. He still clearly remembered that it was the most insanely powerful weapon in Glory's history. Even so, he still felt lucky to get the weapon and upgrade it. Before continuing the game, he took the time to go to the toilet to freshen up because he had to stay up all night. However, when Yaqiu came back to see Chen Guo, she was already asleep in her seat. Even though they were planning to fight each other, Yaqiu chose not to wake Chen Guo because she looked very sound asleep in her sleep. Yaqiu re-entered the game and decided to join the Forest of Green party to defeat the boss monster that could increase his level. All the other party members sounded very noisy and looked him down because he was a rookie. But he didn't pay much attention to them and used the alias Lord Grim for his new avatar's name at this time. Having just joined the Forest of Green party, Yaqiu could tell they were inexperienced in fighting against the boss monster. In fact, one of them, a young man named Yue, was just showing off and bragging to the other members, mostly women, who had a crush on him. Not long after, the boss monster finally appeared and attacked them repeatedly. Yue and the others seemed overwhelmed by the boss monster's attack, but not so with Yaqiu, who could accurately predict the direction of its attack, so he could parry and dodge the attack. Shiyu noticed something odd when he saw Yue's stats didn't decrease even after fighting the boss monster. While observing his fight, Shiyu finally realized that Yue had always used other people as shields. In fact, he didn't hesitate to sacrifice his party members to keep his stats good, and in the end, he became the only person standing, so all the items and points they got in the battle would be his alone. Yue, overwhelmed, negotiated with Shiyu so that he would help him defeat the boss monster. However, Shiyu refused the offer and left him to fight alone because he had done something devious at the expense of his party members. An irritated Yue then offered all the items he had to Shiyu to get his help, but he still seemed disinterested and let Yue be defeated by the boss monster. After that, Shiyu grabbed his umbrella-like weapon to face the boss monster. At the same time, Chen Guo woke up from her sleep, and she was shocked when she saw he managed to defeat the boss monster and get the super rare items. However, Shiyu's first victory over the boss monster was not as smooth as he thought. Still annoyed with him, Yue slandered him in the global chat by saying that Lord Grimm was a cunning avatar who allowed his party members to be killed for their own profit. Even so, Shiyu took it easy because what Excellent Era had just done to him was far more hurtful than being the target of hate speech by arrogant and show-off rookies. Chen Guo then asked if he wasn't angry about being slandered so cruelly by Yue. Hearing that, he casually said he wasn't too concerned about it and immediately re-entered the game to raise his level. Bad rumors about him had apparently spread throughout the 10th server, as everyone seemed to be talking about him behind his back. Shiyu, who didn't care about that, approached Yue and invited him to join his party. At first, Yue refused his invitation because he still felt hurt. However, Yue agreed to join his party after realizing he had good fighting skills. Shiyu then displayed his abilities in front of Yue and his party members, as if to confirm that their level wasn't on par with him being able to slay the boss monster in a short amount of time. In fact, when they entered the spider monster's lair, Shiyu could easily find out where the spider monsters were hiding and defeat them all. He broke the record for being the only player who could take down the boss spider monster in a very short time, thus making Yue and his party members very surprised to see his abilities. At the same time, the other parties are trying to defeat the monsters. However, their steps were blocked because Shiyu slaughtered the monsters indiscriminately, leaving no chance for the other players. When he finished all the battles and returned to the veranda, Shiyu was surprised by a friend request from a player with the alias Blue River from Blue Brook Guild, one of the powerhouse guilds backed by the Blue Rain team. Blue River apparently tried to recruit Shiyu into the Blue Brook Guild because right now, his party needed tough players to set a brilliant record. Shiyu expressed his willingness to join the Blue Brook Guild, but on a condition: they had to give him their super rare items. Knowing Blue Rain was in a slump, they rejected it because they had a difficult time. As the sun rose on the eastern horizon, Shiyu decided to end the login session of the game and rested in the room that Chen Guo had provided for him. Long story short, when night fell and Shiyu was about to start his job, he saw a broadcast on television showing his former manager announcing retirement, who was no longer part of Excellent Era's team. Even though he didn't have any expression on his face, he was actually still very hurt by Excellent Era's treatment of unilaterally dismissing him and forcing him to resign from Glory. Shiyu then came out of there and found Chen Guo crying. She was sad because her favorite player, Kiyu, had resigned. Seeing this, he finally realized that his former alias, Kiyu, had become a legendary player who had inspired many people, including her. Sometime later, Shiyu, who was now on the night shift at Happy Internet Cafe, decided to focus on his work and didn't want to get carried away because if he got too emotional, Chen Guo would know his identity as the owner of the legendary alias Kiyu would be discovered. Even so, Shiyu was a little worried for Chen Guo because she seemed devastated by the news of his resignation. Because of that, he invited her to enter the Glory game to help him find the skeleton warrior. Actually, he didn't need anyone's help to carry out the mission. He simply asked Chen Guo's help just to comfort her so she wouldn't feel sad anymore and to calm herself down. Chen Guo looked impressed and praised Shiyu when he could easily complete the mission. However, she seemed to be in a bad mood, so she left from there. Meanwhile, Shiyu decided to continue the game and join the Blue Brook Guild to help those who had difficulty setting a new winning record on the 10th server. In the game, Blue River welcomed Lord Grimm, Shiyu's avatar, in front of the Frost Forest Gate and introduced his guild members and their professions to the team. However, he didn't seem to agree with the choice of profession and suggested that they fight as they were. Despite the opposition from the other guild members, Shiyu looked relaxed and openly proposed himself as the mission leader. While the other guild members were still discussing their strategy against the enemy, Shiyu had already entered the battlefield first. Without thinking, he then made a mess and attracted the attention of the goblins that were their opponents. He showed his prowess when facing a herd of goblins alone, even impressing Blue River with the technique he used to take down a herd of goblins with just one hit. Ye Xiu had apparently used a strategy of gathering all the goblins in one place and attacking them simultaneously. However, his guild members underestimate this tactic and think he is a novice player who likes to act casually. Unexpectedly, Ye Xiu managed to lure out all the goblins and lead them towards Blue River and his guild members. With his direction and using their abilities, the Blue Brook Guild was finally able to win and solve the battle. It was the best winning record they have ever recorded in the history of the Glory game. The following day, Ye Xiu, who was going to meet Chen Guo at the change of shift, saw his boss still sleeping on the sofa. He chose not to wake her and then wrapped her in a blanket. Towards dusk, she seemed to be in a hurry to leave after receiving a call from someone. She apparently intended to pick up her best friend, a young woman named Tong Ro, who had just arrived in the city. Instead of letting Tong Ro rest after a long journey, Chen Guo asked her to play Glory. Because of her good looks, many people assume she's not good at Glory and merely has a pretty face. However, she then proved that she had a pretty face and great abilities in the game of Glory. Even Ye Xiu was impressed by her prowess in playing. Even so, Tong Ro didn't want to play Glory professionally because she thought it was too easy. Seeing Tong Ro's ability just now, Chen Guo thought of Ye Xiu, who was able to finish the fight in just seconds, and decided to have a one-on-one match between them. Chen Guo threatened to fire him if he refused to do the match, so Ye Xiu was finally forced to comply with her wishes. To make the match even more interesting, Ye Xiu made a bet, in which he then bet his cigarette. Tong Ro accepted the challenge and risked her money because she didn't smoke. Even though he didn't deny that Tong Ro's APM was great, she was still no match for him. He could easily win the match. Tong Ro, who looked annoyed, asked Ye Xiu to play one more match and bet the money again. However, he could beat her easily, making him have a lot of money on the table because she kept asking for a rematch. He then asked her to stop competing as he didn't want her to lose more money. Ye Xiu told Tong Ro that it took more than great ability to move one's hands to press the keyboard keys to play Glory. Furthermore, he said many professional players were far superior and had a better APM than her. Hearing that, the frustrated Tong Ro finally came to her senses and was determined to get better so she could beat Ye Xiu one day. For that, she created a new avatar called Soft Mist. The next day, Ye Xiu treated the employees of Happy Net Cafe with the money he got from winning the bet against Tong Ro. On the other hand, Tong Ro seemed to have been there and was still undecided about which class to choose because whatever class was chosen in an MMORPG game would determine the player's potential victory. Inspired by Ye Xiu's god-level fighting style, Chen Guo suggested that Tong Ro choose the Battle Mage class, just like Ye Xiu. Hearing this, she became interested and excited, especially after Chen Guo showed her a collection of folders that contained recordings of all the Battle God battles until the player finally decided to resign. Ye Xiu, who had been listening to their conversation earlier, offered to teach Tong Ro how to play the Battle Mage avatar in person instead of observing Ye Xiu's style of play and following Ye Xiu's guide, which in fact was written by him 9 years ago. However, Chen Guo immediately rejected the offer, afraid he would teach Tong Ro strange things. The scene then switches and shows the atmosphere in the game, where the Blue Brook Guild is on a mission to defeat the wild boss. However, Blue River and his guild members soon became desperate because the wild boss, a giant, was quite difficult to overthrow. When Blue River and his guild members were hiding to discuss their next strategy, they were surprised by the appearance of two other guilds that were their rivals, Herb Garden and Tyrannical Ambition. The two guild leaders tried to negotiate with Blue River so that everyone could make an equal profit. However, Blue River refused their offer until, in the end, they did not reach an agreement because they were more concerned with their respective egos. While discussing, a Brawler class player arrived and launched an attack on the wild boss. The Brawler has the right timing, so his attacks can hit the wild boss's face. Even so, he didn't have much experience in combat, so he made a trivial mistake which made the wild boss furious and attacked him back. The overwhelmed Brawler then rushed to run away. However, in the end, he became desperate and almost got killed by the wild boss if Ye Xiu didn't arrive in time to help him. He then asked the Brawler to add him to the guild party, so he could fight against the wild boss. He realized that the Brawler wasn't good enough in battle. However, he didn't mind that because, honestly, Ye Xiu preferred a type of person like Brawler who obediently followed all his instructions, rather than someone who thought he was the smartest or the best and looked down on him instead. When Ye Xiu was fighting to the death against the wild boss, Blue River and the other two guild leaders offered to cooperate by luring him with various benefits if he was willing to join their guild. However, Ye Xiu ignored them and focused on the fight. Having received no response from him, the other two guild leaders decided to jump into battle because they didn't want to let Ye Xiu defeat the wild boss and gain the advantage alone. But that wasn't the case with Blue River, who already knew Ye Xiu's prowess. He instead ordered his men to protect Ye Xiu. Meanwhile, Ye Xiu had already devised a strategy for the battle. When the party members of the three guilds started to enter the battlefield, They rushed to escape from there because apparently, the wild boss turned into a berserk and resurrected the undead in the boneyard. Ye Xiu then devised a plan with the brawler to take the wild boss somewhere while the party members were battling an army of zombies. After realizing the plan, Blue River rushed after him, who later witnessed how great Ye Xiu was when he defeated the wild boss. He was finally able to win the fight along with the brawler and his party members. Back in the real world, a young man named Shu Boyuan, the owner of the Blue River account, sends a message to Ye Xiu to offer to cooperate again on the next mission. However, he refused as it turned out that he had already received an offer from the Tyrannical Ambition Guild to help them. After that, Ye Xiu received a notification about his former team, Excellent Era, who managed to break his record in fighting in the Frost Forest by recording a shorter time than his fight with the Blue Brook Guild. Long story short, due to some internal problems, Cold Knight, the leader of the Tyrannical Ambition Guild, then asked Ye Xiu to find some additional members to carry out their mission in Frost Forest. He then recruited the brawler, Tong Ro, who used the Soft Mist account, and Sumu Cheng, who used the Cleansing Mist account on the 10th server. Seeing the team members brought by Ye Xiu, who were female players and beginners, Cold Knight had doubts about their abilities. However, the guildmaster told Cold Knight to entrust everything to Ye Xiu because they needed to break a new record in the Frost Forest to surpass the Excellent Era. When entering the battlefield, Ye Xiu used the same strategy, to lure the goblins out of hiding and gather them all in one place to make it easier to destroy them. With much more solid cooperation than before, they finally managed to win the battle after Sumu Cheng used her signature technique to annihilate the remaining herd of goblins. Despite her being an Excellent Era member, Ye Xiu thanked Sumu Cheng for helping him. Even though they didn't manage to break Excellent Era's team record, he seemed satisfied because his real goal was for Tong Ro and the brawler to have more experience in battle. After that, Ye Xiu, who had finished his login session in Glory, chose to join Chen Guo to watch the fight between Excellent Era's team against 301 Degrees team in a team-to-team match. Chen Guo and the audience were seen shouting their support for Excellent Era's team even though Ye Qiu had resigned a while ago. Even though Sun Xiang, who was now playing the Battle God avatar, was able to put on an impressive performance and managed to defeat several core players from the 301 Degrees team, Ye Xiu didn't seem impressed by that at all because he had predicted that the 301 Degrees team had deliberately lost in the battle. In the first round match, Sun Xiang achieves victory individually. Ye Xiu then commented that Glory is not a single-player game. It takes a solid team to win and set a brilliant record, especially for a great team of Excellent Era's class that had many professional players who were quite formidable and couldn't be underestimated, like Sumu Cheng. When the second half of the match started, the 301 Degrees team began to show the success of their strategy and overwhelmed the Excellent Era team. When the match's excitement reached its peak, there was a power outage in the area. However, in the end, the match between the teams was won by 301 Degrees. The scene then switches and shows a man named Liu Hao, a member of Excellent Era's team. He, annoyed at losing the match against the 301 Degrees team, chose to cheer himself up by drinking. An irritated Liu Hao then blamed Sun Xiang for making their team's performance worse from time to time. Even though his current position as team vice-captain, Liu Hao was secretly displeased that the management had made Sun Xiang captain because he had recently joined Excellent Era's team. On his way home, accompanied by a rookie team member, Liu Hao stopped by the Happy Net Cafe, where he met Tong Ro, who was focused on playing Glory. Mesmerized by Tong Ro's beauty, Liu Hao seduced her without noticing that Ye Xiu was there because he was still under the intoxicating alcohol. Annoyed that she ignored him, Liu Hao then tried to use a big name as a professional player on Excellent Era's team to impress her, but his efforts turned out to be in vain. When he finally realized Ye Xiu was there, Liu Hao showed no respect for his former captain and instead looked down on Ye Xiu, who was now working the night shift at an internet cafe. He turned out to grudge against Ye Xiu, who often scolded him when he was the captain of Excellent Era's team. Ye Xiu didn't deny that Liu Hao did have pretty good skills, but he had a bad temper. This often makes it difficult for other team members. Liu Hao then boasted of his achievements in successfully occupying the position as the vice-captain of Excellent Era's team. However, Ye Xiu didn't seem to care about that. He even blatantly cornered Liu Hao for his poor performance against the 301 Degrees team, making Liu Hao irritated, and he chose to rush away. Liu Hao didn't seem to let Ye Xiu go. After returning to Excellent Era's team headquarters, he entered the game on the 10th server, creating a new avatar named Hateful Sword. Knowing that on the 10th server, there was an avatar named Lord Grim, who was quite famous for his great ability in battle and used special self-made equipment as a weapon, Liu Hao immediately knew that Lord Grim was Ye Xiu. Because of that, Liu Hao challenged Lord Grim to a one-on-one fight and tried to persuade him to make himself a party member. He planned to learn the brilliant tricks and strategies used by Ye Xiu so that he could set a good record in every match, possibly making him the captain of Excellent Era's team in the future. However, because he was too focused on Ye Xiu, Liu Hao forgot about the important match ahead, namely the individual competition against a professional player from the Blue Rain team named Huang Xiaotian. Even though Huang Xiaotian talked too much, chatting non-stop during matches, he had quite a formidable ability. He could easily corner Liu Hao, who was not focused on the match because he was overthinking about Ye Xiu. Huang could show his great ability in battle, where he is known to be very difficult to beat in individual competition, so most opposing teams prefer to use 1 versus 3 tactics just to beat him. Because this time, Liu Hao was not focused and competed without proper preparation, he finally had to give up losing to Huang Xiaotian. Not long after, Ye Xiu and Tong Rou, who were on night shift duty, saw a man sneaking around the entrance of Happy Net Cafe. Due to her suspicious appearance and movements, she immediately assumed that the man intended to steal something at Happy Net Cafe. However, Ye Xiu, who already knew the man's identity, then used a hand gesture to ask him to come inside and follow him. He then took the man to a quiet corner of the room so he could feel more relaxed and protected from the people's curiosity. That man was none other than Huang Xiaotian, the professional player from the Blue Rain team who had defeated Liu Hao. Huang Xiaotian can talk to the point where he becomes lightheaded. But he can be ruthless in battle and never fails to seize an opening to defeat his opponent. However, despite his constant chatter, he is actually a calm person inside. It's this inner calm that allows him to be an expert opportunist. Because of that, Ye Xiu invited him over and asked for his help carrying out the Boneyard mission. Entering the battle arena at Boneyard, Ye Xiu gathered his party members consisting of Tong Rou, Sumu Cheng, and the brawler, whose real name was Bao Rongxing. Having just started the battle, Huang Xiaotian was already raving at length and showing great curiosity about the techniques and strategies they would use to break the latest record in the Boneyard. Huang Xiaotian approached Ye Xiu and asked about his self-made equipment to defeat his enemies. However, he chose to show it head-on and let Huang Xiaotian use his instincts to win the battle. With his new tactic, Ye Xiu managed to trap a flock of zombies between the cliffs to make it easier for them to defeat the second boss who was about to appear. He purposely didn't kill the zombie swarm because they could live again. Shortly afterward, the second boss finally appeared and then attacked them. Ye Xiu and his party members went hand in hand to face the second boss who had a much more terrifying appearance and strength than the previous wild boss. After successfully winning the battle with solid cooperation, he revealed that the hateful sword who was about to join his party was Liu Hao. Ye Xiu had already guessed that Liu Hao intended to steal information about the techniques and tactics he used in battle. Even so, he accepted hateful sword in his party because Liu Hao was a good professional player. He hoped that Tong Rou and Bao Rongxing, who were beginners, could learn a lot by looking at the techniques Liu Hao used. He actually admitted that Liu Hao was a great player. However, his bad nature is indeed very annoying. At the Excellent Era team's headquarters, Liu Hao finally found that Ye Xiu had set a new winning record in the Boneyard, breaking his and Excellent Era's record. Out of curiosity, he then checked the background of Ye Xiu's party members. He thought that Ye Xiu must have invited professional players he knew to complete the mission. He already knew some of Ye Xiu's party members, but there was one name he had never heard of before: Flowing Tree, the Blade Master. However, after seeing Flowing Tree's full profile and statistics, Liu Hao discovered that the account's owner was none other than Huang Xiaotian of the Blue Rain team. Meanwhile, at Happy Net Cafe, Huang Xiaotian asked Ye Xiu about his decision to retire early. He then asked why Ye Xiu didn't transfer to another team. Looking at Ye Xiu's god-level skills, he is sure that many formidable teams will fight for Ye Xiu to get into their team. However, Ye Xiu was apparently still worried about Sumu Cheng, who was still on Excellent Era's team, so he didn't want to move to another team until she finished her contract with Excellent Era's team. After a short conversation, Huang Xiaotian then said goodbye and asked Ye Xiu to return to the main server, Heavenly Domain, and compete in the professional match between teams. Although he couldn't say when he would return to the main server, Ye Xiu promised he would return there. Sometime later, Ye Xiu was back on a mission with his party members. However, he noticed the presence of Plantago Seed, the guild leader of Herb Garden, who had been watching their battle. He apparently didn't wait any longer to launch an attack on Ye Xiu and his party members. The Plantago Seed's abilities could not be underestimated. Moreover, he possessed magic power that could paralyze Tong Rou's movements and easily dodge Bao Rongxing's attacks. The two novice players seemed overwhelmed by Plantago Seed, a professional player who was quite tough. However, seeing Plantago Seed's fighting style against Tong Rou and Bao Rongxing, Ye Xiu finally realized that the person currently playing Plantago Seed's avatar was not Qianzi, the owner of the account, but Wang Jiexi, the captain of the elite tiny herb team that houses the Herb Garden Guild. Wang Jiexi is called the Magician due to his unpredictable and changeable fighting style. As one of the most experienced players who had played Glory for nearly 10 years, Ye Xiu was well acquainted with the characteristics of several formidable players who had certain privileges. One of them was Wang Jiexi. Ye Xiu and Wang Jiexi went head-to-head and engaged in a fierce battle, which Ye Xiu eventually won. After that, Qianzi asked Wang Jiexi about Lord Grimm and his party members. He said their tactics were good for the novice players on the 10th server. Even so, he didn't deny that Lord Grimm's fighting style was similar to Ye Qiu's, although not completely the same. Wang Jiexi then went to Yingji, one of the Tiny Herb team's rookies, and asked him and all the rookies to enter the 10th server on a mission to kill Lord Grimm, who had just defeated him. At first, Yingji and the novice players from the Tiny Herb team seemed to underestimate Lord Grimm, who they thought was just a beginner and amateur because they didn't choose any class. However, when they finally came face to face with the most popular avatar on the 10th server, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded by the god-level skills that Ye Xiu displayed. In the end, Lord Grimm defeated the players from Tiny Herb who had attacked him under Wang Jiexi's command. The defeat from Ye Xiu made Wang Jiexi add a new program in their training, Free Combination, and kill the greatest boss in the history of Glory. Then, he points at Lord Grimm on his computer screen. He is sure that the one playing Lord Grimm's character on the 10th server is Ye Qiu, who has just announced his retirement from the Excellent Era team. Because Wang Jiexi's absolute orders, Yingji and his team didn't necessarily let Ye Xiu play quietly on the 10th server. Tiny Herb team players always blocked him in every battle arena. Ye Xiu, who had his own goal with his new avatar, decided to end their game because he didn't want to waste his precious time just serving the Tiny Herb team players as opposed to their training and honing their fighting skills in APM. Ye Xiu then challenged all members of the Tiny Herb team of various levels, including their captain, Wang Jiexi, to fight him simultaneously. Hearing Ye Xiu's arrogant words, they did not stay silent. On the other hand, Wang Jiexi felt the same way, so he accepted Ye Xiu's challenge and ordered all the Tiny Herb players to gang up on Ye Xiu. Even though he had to face a professional team of Tiny Herb alone, Ye Xiu didn't seem overwhelmed because he had his own strategy for dealing with multiple enemies at the same time. But then, Ye Xiu suddenly went offline and re-entered the game using Tong Ro's account. He then told her that he would face the Tiny Herb team players. If Wang Jiexi used him so that his juniors could do sparring to improve their respective skills, then he would do the same thing so that Tong Ro's abilities would improve. Ye Xiu had even set up a special arena for the fight, where other players could watch and observe the fight up close, but they couldn't get involved in it other than the players who were fighting. On the other hand, a young man named Qiao Yifan, also a rookie of the Tiny Herb team, looks frustrated because his fighting skills have not developed significantly at all, even though he has been fighting hard for some time. Hearing this, Wang Jiexi said that Qiao Yifan might not be fit for the Tiny Herb team, and maybe he can do better in a different team. Not only was he often ostracized because of his underdeveloped abilities, but Qiao Yifan was frequently humiliated by the rest of the team. Not long after, Ye Xiu contacted Qiao Yifan and then praised the accuracy of his attacks while fighting against him. According to him, Qiao Yifan should change position because being an assassin in a team can't maximize his potential. Ye Xiu suggested that Qiao Yifan be a Ghostblade whose job was mainly assisting his teammate in close combat. He apparently realized Qiao Yifan's great potential as a Ghostblade because he has a good sense of cooperation and observation ability. Upon hearing that, Qiao Yifan seemed indecisive and frustrated because changing classes was a difficult decision. After all, he had to redo everything from the beginning. However, Ye Xiu reassures him that the outcome will be worth the decision and asks him to be bolder. After thinking things over carefully, Qiao Yifan, previously in the assassin class but always considered useless by everyone, finally decided to follow Ye Xiu's suggestion to change his class to Ghostblade. Meanwhile, Wang Jiexi showed an interest in Tong Ro when he looked at her overall profile, a novice battle mage with the alias Soft Mist who had great skills, even surpassing Qiao Yifan who had been training for quite a while with professional players. Long story short, the battle between two Glory players with god-level skills had finally begun. Ye Xiu and Wang Jiexi displayed their respective abilities and fought earnestly, even though neither played on the main server using their main accounts. A very epic fight that ended in a draw. However, the best result was expected from the two professional players with god-level skills. It was possible that the outcome of the battle would be different if Ye Xiu and Wang Jiexi played using their main accounts and were in the heavenly domain of Glory. After that, Tong Ro told Ye Xiu that Wang Jiexi had contacted her because he intended to recruit her to be part of the Tiny Herb team. However, Tong Ro simply rejected the offer because she apparently still felt confused if she had to play Glory in the professional realm. Ye Xiu then gave Tong Ro a little advice if she really wanted to become a professional player. She had to like Glory and thought playing the game was fun. Because when we do something with a happy feeling and without the slightest coercion, it will bring changes for the better. Elsewhere, the members of the Tiny Herb team looked so enthusiastic when they saw the captain of the Samsara team, a man named Zhao Zekai, who is exceptionally handsome, appear on television as a commercial star for an ice cream product. Ningji and the others seemed envious of his good looks, which was able to attract many sponsors for the team. However, Zhao Zekai not only has a handsome face, but he does have excellent skills and is recognized by other professional players. That's why Wang Jiexi advised his juniors to train hard so they can be like him, who can bring in many sponsors for their team. News of Zhao Zekai's rising popularity has spread everywhere, including on social media platforms. His handsome face and charming skills make women very fond of him. In fact, it is not uncommon for them to send flattery and romantic messages to their idols. On the other hand, a young delinquent with blonde hair carrying a large bag was seen entering the Happy Net Cafe in search of Lord Grimm's whereabouts. The easygoing delinquent turned out to be Bao Rongxing, who had come all the way to meet Ye Xiu. After that, Ye Xiu, who always spent time playing Glory with Tong Ro, was surprised by a message from a player asking for his help in breaking the winning record. He didn't squander the opportunity, but he certainly didn't help them for nothing. In return, Ye Xiu asked for some of the rare items they had. Rumors about Lord Grimm, who often helped several guilds to complete missions or break victory records, finally started to spread on the 10th server. Especially now, Ye Xiu said he wanted to help Full Moon Guild complete their mission and asked for the guild's 4 rare items in return. On the other hand, Blue River, who heard the rumors, then switched to the chat page of professional players who all have new accounts on the 10th server to set a new winning record for their guild and team. Usually, the chat only contains competition between guilds in completing missions or breaking victory records. But now, Blue River and the others were talking about Lord Grimm willing to help the Full Moon Guild and asking for quite a fantastic reward in return. Not long after, Blue River notified that Lord Grimm and Full Moon Guild had set a new record, breaking the previous record held by the Blue Brook Guild. They looked annoyed, as did the members of the other guilds. They didn't like Lord Grimm's presence on the 10th server. However, they did not deny that they needed his help on certain missions. Ironically, the competition to break the new winning record between the guilds had now become a competition to hire Lord Grimm's services first. Because of that, Blue River, who had wanted to relax on the 10th server, became stressed and frustrated facing such a domineering Lord Grimm, so he finally decided to return to the heavenly domain for a while. When he was free and not involved in any missions, Ye Xiu chose to stroll the trading market on the 10th server with Bao Rongxing and Tong Ro. This place sells various items and weapons that are useful in battle. He intended to buy weapons for them to increase their ability in battle. Knowing this, Bao Rongxing did not hesitate to choose the best and most expensive weapon. Meanwhile, Tong Ro seemed to be asking Ye Xiu for advice on the best weapon that suited her abilities and fighting style. The scene then switches to Heavenly Domain, the main server of Glory, which can only be entered by professional players or players who have reached a certain level. In Heavenly Domain, Blue River used his real name, Shu Boyuan, and henceforth will be called so. Shu Boyuan, who didn't know who the Lord Grimm account owner was on the 10th server, then asked the Blue Rain team members on the main server about the legendary player Lord Grimm. It was because he was very sure that with such god-level skills, Lord Grimm must have played in the Heavenly Domain. However, the professional players of the Blue Rain team laughed at Shu Boyuan, who looked panicked and frustrated just because of a newcomer on the 10th server, when actually, Shu Boyuan is one of the 5 great experts within the guild. However, because he looked so depressed, the professional players on Blue Rain's team finally agreed to monitor the situation on the 10th server and help him to set a new winning record that other guilds would be hard-pressed to break. Turning back to Ye Xiu, he met a Blue Brook Guild member selling rare items and weapons. They seemed to be negotiating a fair price for a rare item. But because Ye Xiu irritated him, they argued briefly that they didn't notice that some people were watching them. Sometime later, Ye Xiu entered the Desolate Islands area with Tong Ro and Bao Rongxing to test their new items and weapons. But then, Bao Rongxing seemed to notice that someone had been stalking them for a while and then ambushed the person until they were involved in a fierce close-quarters battle. Unexpectedly, the stalker was Qiao Yifan, who had followed Ye Xiu's advice to change classes and had now become Ghostblade. Qiao Yifan told him that he was on an adventure to get used to and practice his skills as a Ghostblade. Hearing this, Bao Rongxing assumed he was not the real stalker and just happened to be there. Not long after, the stalkers who had been stalking Ye Xiu and his party members appeared, which turned out to be players from various guilds and formidable teams who intended to destroy them. Several representatives from the Blue Brook Guild, Herb Garden, and Tyrannical Ambition were seen observing them from a distance, which indicated that the 3 guilds were not involved in the attack on Ye Xiu and his party members. With their superior fighting skills, they could defeat their enemies quite easily. However, just as they were on the verge of winning the battle, suddenly, a player jumped from above and launched an attack at Ye Xiu. Luckily, Bao Rongxing had sharp instincts and speed, allowing him to fend off the attack. He got into a fierce battle with the newly arrived player, which was none other than Poplar Beach, one of the professional players from the Blue Rain team who had bothered to come to the 10th server to help Blue River. Their difference in ability is obvious, showing that Poplar Beach is a great professional player. However, Poplar Beach was no match for Ye Xiu, who used to be the most respected battle god in the heavenly domain. He could easily defeat that Poplar Beach. Knowing that the guildmaster of Blue Brook had even stepped in and entered the 10th server to set a new winning record, Ye Xiu then realized that Blue Rain's team had ambitions to dominate the 10th server with their guild. Ye Xiu told the guildmaster that Poplar Beach had better individual fighting skills than Blue River. However, if they wanted to complete every mission on the 10th server and set an unbreakable winning record, then what they needed was Blue River's ability and leadership that was far better than Poplar Beach. Receiving praise from Lord Grimm, Blue River looked happy because this was the first time someone had truly acknowledged his abilities as a leader. On the other hand, Bao Rongxing informed that the other players had learned about their battle and requested that Lord Grimm immediately have a one-on-one fight with Poplar Beach. Meanwhile, Blue River wondered about the mastermind behind the attack on Lord Grimm and his party members, who was none other than the Excellent Era team member who held a grudge against Ye Xiu and had ambitions to kill him and his party members. In the end, with the help of Qiao Yifan, who joined as his party member, Ye Xiu finally managed to break the latest winning record in the Desolate Islands. Sometime later, responding to a challenge from Poplar Beach, Ye Xiu decided to fight against him in Heavenly Domain using Chen Guo's account. With his god-level skills, Ye Xiu defeated a professional player using a mediocre avatar in less than 40 seconds, a record that Chen Guo would certainly not be able to achieve. Elsewhere, Yu Wenjiao, the captain of the Blue Rain team, is seen analyzing the fight between Poplar Beach and Ye Xiu using Chen Guo's account. Even though he didn't know Ye Xiu's true identity, he insisted that whoever used Chen Guo's account against Poplar Beach must be a professional player with many years of experience playing Glory. After that, Yu Wenjiao checked the profile and records that Ye Xiu and his party members had broken on the 10th server. He could even correctly guess that Liu Hao from Team Excellent Era had infiltrated his party member to steal the tactics and techniques used by Lord Grimm. The fact that Lord Grimm didn't seem to mind indicates that he is a professional player with myriad abilities and experience. Yu Wenjiao was indeed known as a master tactician, so he could easily guess the various techniques and abilities a person possessed. Besides being able to guess the mental state of Liu Hao when he fought one-on-one against Huang Xiaotian, Yu Wenjiao could easily guess that Huang Xiaotian was the account behind Flowing Tree, who had joined Lord Grimm's party member on several missions. Because of that, it was easy for Yu Wenjiao to tell that Lord Grimm was Ye Qiu just by looking at his fight. Because it was discovered, Huang Xiaotian then told his captain about the characteristics of Lord Grimm. He chose to be unspecialized, and also about his self-made weapon, which is quite unique. Furthermore, Huang Xiaotian explained that they would have to wait at least a year for Ye Qiu to finally be able to truly return to the heavenly domain. In another place, Shu Boyuan looked surprised that the person behind Lord Grimm's account was none other than Ye Qiu, a former professional player from Team Excellent Era who resigned a while ago. That night, Tong Ro and Chen Guo were seen reading an article about Lord Grimm and his party members. The article stated that Lord Grimm's avatar was played by a professional player who was very experienced and possessed god-level skills. On the other hand, Huang Xiaotian then told Ye Xiu about the article, which indicated that his identity as Ye Qiu might soon be exposed. Huang Xiaotian, discussing his identity through the chat page, didn't notice that Yu Wenjiao was standing behind him and watching their chat. Huang Xiaotian panicked, then told Ye Xiu that his captain knew their conversation. However, he didn't care and openly commented on Yu Wenjiao's fighting skills and weaknesses. Even though he didn't show any irritation at all and smiled happily, Yu Wenjiao didn't seem like he wanted to be belittled by Ye Xiu and then challenged him to a one-on-one fight. Long story short, a fierce battle took place between Yu Wenjiao, who used the god-level Warlock account, against Ye Xiu with his god-level skill. Warlocks mainly focus on control. Dealing with Warlocks requires abnormal status resistance, which is affected by Spirit, as they deal with abnormal statuses. For this reason, Warlocks is known as tough person to deal with, even by professional players. Ye Xiu even seemed to be very careful against Yu Wenjiao because any attack launched by the Warlock could be fatal and lower his performance level. The fight between them was completely out of control, even to the point of causing the battlefield to fall apart. According to Yu Wenjiao's judgment, Ye Xiu's Lord Grimm character was only able to reach level 95. Even when Ye Xiu reached level 50, the gains that he would gain would be far less than the losses he would experience. After the fight ended in a draw, Yu Wenjiao asked Huang Xiaotian to analyze his fight against Ye Xiu. Even though Yu Wenjiao wasn't a player with the advantage in APM speed, he could dodge Ye Xiu's attacks 20 times. Huang Xiaotian, vice captain and one of the most formidable players on Blue Rain's team, could only dodge Ye Xiu's attacks 3 times. Knowing his fighting skills weren't as great as his captain's, Huang Shaotian contacted Ye Xiu and challenged him to a one-on-one fight. However, Ye Xiu rejected the request because he had to investigate the article that contained news about him and his party members. Not long after, Sumu Cheng came to Happy Net Cafe to see Ye Xiu because she actually missed him so much. She then took him on an adventure in the 10th server to pass the time. Entering the game, Ye Xiu and his party members, including Huang Shaotian and Qiao Yifan, immediately found out they were still targeted by a group of people who were intent on killing them. Sumu Cheng assumed they might be sent by Liu Hao, who had ambitions to stop Ye Xiu from developing his new avatar in Glory and prevent him from gaining recognition from the professional players, even when he had always kept his true identity hidden. Wherever they went, Ye Xiu and his party members were always followed by a group of people until they got into a fight that was just a waste of time and slowed down the path they had to take to reach their destination. On the one hand, a player who had been tailing Bao Rongxing lost track of him and tried to find his whereabouts. However, he instead fell into the well and finally found Bao Rongxing whereabouts, who was hiding there. When Bao Rongxing was about to attack that man because he thought that man was the one who was after him, the young man immediately told Bao Rongxing that he was not his accomplice and instead wanted to help Ye Xiu and his party members. The young man introduced himself as Luo Ji and made a friend request with Bao Rongxing. Without thinking, he accepted the friend request and left. However, Bao Rongxing soon became the target of a group that wanted to kill him, and he still waited for Luo Ji, who was still trying to climb the well, to go to the surface. Finally, after he got to the surface, Luo Ji then climbed onto the roof of the tallest building to monitor the situation and then hinted at Bao Rongxing to avoid those who were so eager to kill him, as if they had a bitter grudge against Ye Xiu and his party members. Following Luo Ji's instructions, Bao Rongxing finally managed to escape the people chasing him and reunited with Luo Ji in an empty building. Ye Xiu then contacted him, asking about his condition, and asked his party members to gather in Qinji Forest. However, when Bao Rongxing was about to go there, Luo Ji stopped him, saying that there were 5 other groups around them, so he then asked Bao Rongxing to follow him through a shortcut so as not to be caught by them. On the other hand, it turned out that Excellent Era's team incited another guild of formidable teams competing in the heavenly domain by slandering Ye Xiu and his party members, making them the target of hatred from players who were irritated at having been defeated by them or because they could break the winning record. The cunning tactic turned out to be quite successful, leaving Ye Xiu and his party members overwhelmed by players far above their level, and there were even more of them. However, Ye Xiu had the help of Huang Shaotian, one of the most formidable professional players in the heavenly domain. They could more freely carry out attacks indiscriminately with his flowing tree account without having to maintain an image like he usually did when playing in the heavenly domain. Ye Xiu and Huang Shaotian arrived at Qinji Forest earlier than the others and were faced with countless guild members, so they decided to get out of the way first while devising a new strategy. Not long after, Tong Rou and Sumu Cheng arrived to help them, along with Bao Rongxing and Luo Ji, who had managed to survive their previous attackers. Since his party members were complete, Ye Xiu devised a new tactic and launched attacks in various directions to divide them. With solid cooperation, his members managed to turn things around. Even now, the players who attacked them were cornered because they had no strategy and were divided because of their selfishness. All of the players involved in the ambush and assault mission against Ye Xiu and his party members finally gathered at the Altar of Life, a place where the avatars that had died would wait to be resurrected. The players looked so irritated that they had been defeated by Ye Xiu and his party members and had suffered a considerable loss. However, not a few were professional players from formidable teams like Excellent Era and Tyrannical Ambition. On the other hand, Ye Xiu and his party members decided to end the login session of the game, so they could relax for a while and think about their next move. After joining Ye Xiu's party members a few times, Huang Shaotian realized that Ye Xiu might have other goals when he created a new account on the 10th server. All this time, he thought Ye Xiu was just wasting his time playing on the 10th server. However, seeing the composition of the team formed by Ye Xiu, Huang Shaotian immediately concluded that he probably intended to form a new team to compete in the professional tournament that would be held in the heavenly domain. Although for now, it was impossible because Ye Xiu was not allowed to compete in the heavenly domain after his retirement. But he still could prepare everything for a year before they actually debuted as a professional team. The next day at the Tyranny Team headquarters, the formidable team that houses the Tyrannical Ambition Guild, Jiangyu, the leader of the Tyrannical Ambition Guild, intends to meet the team captain, a man named Han Wenqing. However, because Han Wenqing was known to be very strict and his words were quite harsh, Jiangyu's gut shrunk because he did not dare to face him. In fact, their manager chose not to interfere in all matters related to the game and left everything to Han Wenqing. Because of that, Jiangyu then decided to meet the vice captain, Zhang Xinji, who had a more friendly personality. However, in terms of seriousness and discipline, Zhang Xinji was not much different from their captain. Jiangyu then handed over a flash drive containing the footage of Lord Grimm's battle on the 10th server, which had broken all of their guilds and other guilds' winning records, and unsettled several other formidable teams, one of which was Excellent Era. Zhang Xinji then went to see Han Wenqing and explained the situation on the 10th server, which had become chaotic after Lord Grimm's arrival. Observing the battle from the video footage, they thought Lord Grimm's fighting style was very similar to Ye Qiu's. However, they couldn't confirm further, so they had to intervene against Lord Grimm on the 10th server. Long story short, Zhang Xinji created a new account on the 10th server and immediately confronted Ye Qiu and several of his men. As the vice captain, his intelligence and tactical ability grant him the title of Master Tactician, placing him alongside Ye Qiu and Yu Wenjiao. Because of that, Ye Qiu was cautious against Zhang Xinji, whose unpredictable abilities. Even though he had managed to trap the Tyrannical Ambition guild members several times with his technique, Zhang Xinji was always able to break his attacks. Ye Qiu immediately became desperate when Han Wenqing finally appeared on the battlefield with god-level skills on par with Ye Qiu's. The fierce god-level battles were inevitable because, just like Ye Qiu and Yu Wenjiao, Han Wenqing possessed abilities great enough to play the god-level account in the heavenly domain, and his abilities were highly respected by professional players. Moreover, Han Wenqing was considered Ye Qiu's true rival in the professional scene. He wasn't completely sure that Ye Qiu was the one who played Lord Grimm's avatar. However, when they were fighting head-to-head with god-level skills, his instincts told him that Lord Grimm was Ye Qiu. He realized the uniqueness that only Ye Qiu possessed when they clashed against each other. During the battle, Han Wenqing asked why Ye Qiu, who decided to retire, created a new account on the 10th server. However, Ye Qiu didn't explain anything to his true rival. As professional players with god-level abilities, their battles always ended in a draw. Ye Qiu with the Battle God avatar and Han Wenqing with the Desert Dust avatar were the two characters who held the longest win rate record of 100% invincibility. However, since the professional tournament was officially held, they became eternal rivals because Ye Qiu joined Excellent Era's team, while Han Wenqing joined Tyranny's team. The first time Han Wenqing gave up on Ye Qiu was during the final match of the professional tournament held some time ago, where Excellent Era's team, which was led by Ye Qiu at that time, won the tournament. Despite being eternal rivals and having to defeat each other, their bond was much stronger than anything else. Turning back to the fight, Han Wenqing again had to accept defeat from Ye Qiu. Even so, he hoped that Ye Qiu could return to the heavenly domain and fight against him with his god-level account like before. Ye Qiu said he would rest for a year and promised to return to heavenly domain. And that was the end of the first season of The King's Avatar. The moral that can be learned from this anime is that if we do anything sincerely, without any pressure, especially with happy feelings, we will get much better results than we had previously expected. Although to achieve it, maybe we will experience various difficulties. However, the results will be worth our efforts.